Hi friends, welcome to Connect with Confidence, and I wanted to bring my friend Donna Hanson back to talk further because she unlocked so many great insights in our previous episode, and I knew that we'd only scratched the surface. And so I asked Donna more about connecting on social media. She's known for teaching about productivity. She's a professional speaker and trainer working right around the world, and her business is over 20 years old. And she's really done some quality thinking, which is something that comes up in our conversation. So I know you'll find this really useful, and maybe even you'll pull out pen and paper and make a note or two. However you like to enjoy your podcast, enjoy.
Somebody looked at me at an event and they go, "You're in technology. You should be taking notes on an iPad or an iPhone or something." And I've thought, is that person right? And then I've gone, no. My differentiator is I don't use technology for technology's sake. Technology has to be purposeful. You know, it has to serve me like I serve the people that I help. So I'm only going to use stuff that serves my purpose.
So excited to have Donna Hanson back again. We had too much wonderful conversation. Well, it's never too much. But Donna, I didn't get to ask you so many questions that I wanted to ask you. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, that's all right. Too much of a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of making up for lost time, weren't we? It's great to sit down, have this conversation and not just be on big group meetings with you all the time. So, Donna, I'd love to ask you today a little more about how we can be more productive in our connecting. But before we get to that, I'd love to ask you about 15-year-old Donna. Obviously, we didn't have the tech or anything like it, but what do you think your 15-year-old self expected you to be doing today?
Well, I know exactly what my 15-year-old self wanted to be doing. And you'll laugh because it's, when I look at it from the lens of where I am now, I go, I wasn't too far off.
Okay.
So when I was, adolescent years, I wanted to be an actress.
Wow.
So I imagined myself, back in the dynasty days, with the big shoulder pads and stuff.
Big hair.
The buffy hair, the Farrah Fawcett, hairstyle, that sort of stuff. I was very, very young when that was on. Maybe actually it was reruns, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I wanted to be an actress. So I think being a professional speaker, trainer, educator, it's not too far removed from that outcome. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So you've been on stage plenty of times. Oh, well, I think... okay, at 15, honestly, I really had no hope for the future. So let's go back a little earlier before life fell apart for a few years. Probably when I was 10, my younger brother was 4, and I was teaching him in order to be, a little advanced when he got to kindergarten. So I was teaching him maths, and of course he loved maths, and he became a maths teacher. But so my mum always said, she thought that I'd become a teacher, but I didn't end up finishing high school. And so university and all of that was just not in my, near future. And I am now teaching. I'm coaching, I'm speaking, and, I love coaching. I started that 15 years ago. And it was not until I wrote Do Talk to Strangers that people started asking me to teach. They said, you can't just inspire us with your stories. You can't just ask us insightful questions. You have to tell us how to. How do we talk to strangers? How do we connect? And that has then led to this podcast. So here we are. And it's my turn to ask you the questions. But thank you. Because nobody was expecting us to go there just then, least of all me. So thanks, Donna. Confidence has been quite a journey for me, like really lacking confidence. And I think it's at times in our life, sometimes our confidence is shattered by things that we go through, and then we rebuild it. And so I guess through this podcast, we want to talk about how do we build our confidence and what does that mean to us? is that something that you can answer? What does confidence mean to you?
Look, I think it means different things to different people. And I honestly think that age has a lot to do with it. Now, that's from personal experience. I know that when I separated from my husband, the story that I'd shared in our last conversation, I was confident in one part, but behind the scenes, I was a bit like the duck, that's looking really good above the water, but underneath I'm paddling like crazy trying to stay afloat. You're just trying to adjust and find your own equilibrium. So I guess for me, there were sort of that sort of time where you start to get some sort of acknowledgement that you're doing okay. Now, I mentioned on our last conversation, finding the strength from within, but I know at the time when my confidence was really lacking, I needed reassurance externally.
Yes.
And the way I got the reassurance was by stepping out and being a contract trainer, because I could get immediate feedback that I was doing good, that I was serving, that I was helping, and that fed my soul. And in fact, those sorts of conversations that I have with people now, where I show them something and they come up and they go, oh my goodness, I thought I was advanced in Excel and you showed me that one thing. I never even knew that was there. Has that only been there in this version? I go, oh, no, it's been there for a little while, but sometimes if you don't know it's there, and you just go, I have the opportunity to light people up.
Yes.
Or I have the opportunity to extinguish their flame.
Yeah.
You just have to be really careful, not only allowing other people to do that to you, but just remembering the power of your words.
Yes.
And the impact it can have on people. I see that, with my son as he was growing up, you'll say things to them and you think that they've had no impact. And then somewhere along the line, the 18-year-old comes up to you and says something and you go, I've heard those words before. And then that's when you realize they were your own words getting fed back to you and you're going, yeah, I was on the right track. He was listening.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that feels like a conversation for another day when we're not recording, because our boys would be like, stop it, Mum. But we do realize that sometimes little things that we've said have planted a seed, and that's exciting to consider that we can plant a seed that is courage or is confidence to a young person.
And we need to be careful that we're not being dismissive of our own knowledge, because often what we assume is normal,
yes,
everybody knows it, other people don't.
Yes.
But the same applies to anybody, you'll know stuff that I don't know. And you'll go inside your head, you'll be saying, but everybody knows that. But they don't.
Yes.
It's just we're the product of our own experiences. And if you haven't experienced certain things, how are you going to know the experience?
Exactly.
There's a highly respected colleague of mine, Colin James, who talks about a term, and I always laugh because it's like the innate Bart Simpson. He talks about how certain things are epistemological experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to actually do the thing to really understand the thing. So the metaphor that he uses is, he talks about swimming. You can learn to swim from a textbook, but it's not until you actually get in the water and you start to swim that you epistemologically understand the actual swimming process. So there's some things that it doesn't matter how you tell somebody, it's not until you actually physically experience it that you understand it.
Oh, I totally get that. I don't know if you ever saw, Tim Ferriss did a video about, he learned a different style of swimming. And you watch the video, he explains the science of it. But I got in the pool and I tried this, and it's like, wow, I'm gliding through the water. It is a very different feel, and it kind of messes with your head for a while if you've been swimming for like 40 years, in the traditional way. So that's absolutely fascinating. So just Google that if you're wondering.
I will.
Tim Ferriss swimming. That would probably find it. Yeah, it was a few years ago, but I loved it. So, Donna, I'm wondering, we want to be better connectors, and sometimes we can get a little overwhelmed with, at the moment, all we're doing is connecting online, hopefully connecting with our neighbors and, in cafes and the places where we can. But online connecting is the majority of our time. So we don't want to get overwhelmed. We want to connect well, and we want to connect for so many different reasons. So we could be needing to connect with people for our business or for our work, staying connected with team members, encouraging them, supporting them, but also staying connected with family. And so I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people recently have been feeling zoomed out. You're just over the technology, you don't want to be touching it. So can you just give us a few tips on how can we make the most of our technologies? I look through your website, I'm like, so you're so across tech in so many ways. And I know that if I wanted to learn something about Excel, you'd probably have so many lights going on in my head. How do we do it online?
So there's so many different things, and I guess I come from a different perspective, and I realized, I'm not even sure how many years ago, I realized I came from a different angle when I was at an event. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I used to love stationery, and I still do. I love stationery. I've got coloured legal pads. Yeah. Like Jerry Seinfeld always writes his work on a yellow legal pad, and he writes out longhand because that whole process enables him to really think through what it is that he's writing, the jokes or the storylines that he's writing. So I've always been into stationery and to coloured textures and things like that. And somebody looked at me at an event and they go, "You're in technology. You should be taking notes on an iPad or an iPhone or something." And I've thought, is that person right? And then I've gone, no. My differentiator is I don't use technology for technology's sake. Yeah. Technology has to be purposeful.
Yes.
It has to serve me like I serve the people that I help. So I'm only going to use stuff that serves my purpose, and that is educating people. So, I'll often get people who come to a program and say, "Oh, I want to know everything there is to know about Excel." And I find it really hard. I have to stifle a laugh because I go, well, what's the point? I could tell you about that Excel has 420 different formulas, of which I probably know this many. That's just a tiny amount. But what I do know is the stuff you need to know that makes a difference. So my motto is you focus on the things that are going to give you the cut through and the leverage, and then you get rid of the rest.
Yeah.
And so as far as social is concerned, it's working out what's your purpose.
Yes.
What's your purpose for it? Like in the case of Facebook, are you looking just to stay connected with friends and family, or are you intending to use this as a platform? And personally, any of my social media footprint everything is business related. I do not put anything online that I don't want my grandmother, God rest her soul, to hear about. So I just think that our digital footprint is there for eternity.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that the legacy that I leave, that the message that I leave is one of service, and it's not one of, saying things just for the sake of them.
Yeah.
Or making people feel uncomfortable. I want people to look at my posts when I post on an article on LinkedIn and say, that's a different perspective. What if I looked at that from a different angle? What would that mean to me? How would that make my life better? What do I think about that? Rather than just go, oh, another cat video, scroll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to add value to people's lives, not suck oxygen from them. We only have a limited amount of time. I want to make my time count. Yeah. And I want to let people know that I value and appreciate their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great, I think, to take time to think about what is my purpose in being here. And, I think when I first started on Facebook many, many years ago, there were just a few friends who were early adopters also who said, oh, you should be on here. But I thought about, well, why do I want to be there? But I saw it as a platform to encourage people and which is really my life's purpose, to encourage and inspire people. And if we stick to that, to our purpose, how do I be of service? How do I add value? Then, yeah, I think that really keeps us out of trouble. And, when I hear people talking about go through your social media, make sure you delete anything that you don't want anyone to see. And I'm like, why put it there in the first place?
I'm reading a great book at the moment. And it's interesting. I tend to only read non-fiction, business-related books. And at the moment, I'm reading a book by a professor of computer science. And I know that sounds exciting, doesn't it? At Georgetown University, and his name's Cal Newport, and he talks about deep work, and it's quite philosophical, and talks in this is the second book of his that I've read. The other one was called Digital Minimalism.
Wow.
And it's all about the fact that technology and everything that we've got rewards us and instantly gratifies us for being distracted.
Yeah.
And how that is creating a society, businesses, etc., that reward people for fragmenting their attention rather than doing deep work that matters. Could you imagine, like as we're recording this, just recently, Elon Musk, his venture with NASA, SpaceX, launched a rocket on the weekend, and they've just docked at the International Space Station. Yeah. And I'm just blown away by all of that. They've spent like 9 years since the last American crew went up to the International Space Station. All the work that would have been involved, you can't tell me that those people would have been fragmented in their thinking. They've had to have deep work and focus time, because if they don't, moments like that matter. One thing wrong, just one little thing in that whole chain of events, and bang, it's all over. So I think the key to us being productive is just prioritizing what really matters.
Yes.
And what really matters to me, and what really matters to you, is going to depend on what our values are, who we serve, and where we are in our world. I mean, if you're at the start of your career, you've probably got much more motivation to take on the world and change things. For me, I'm quite settled and feeling comfortable in my skin, confident with who I am, and going, you know what, in a Zoom world, I've got a great camera, I've got softbox lighting, I've got a really good microphone, I have a great body of work. I don't need 5 cameras and a stream deck, because my content is what people are after. Yeah. And, how can I be authentic when I'm talking to somebody or presenting virtually or whatever? And the best way I can do that is by being me, by not being distracted by all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So, long rant.
No, I love it. I love it because, I've been thinking about, and I've talked about for years through coaching, about how attention changes the brain. And I first heard that from Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz. But now if you Google attention changes the brain, you'll find every neuroscientist talking about it. And so what you're speaking about in that book is he's talking about fragmented attention. And we really have to choose that meaningful work. Yep. And even in this conversation with you, I've silenced my phone. I'm sure you have too. I haven't heard like the bing, bing, bing of social media sites that, where there are things going on. Yeah, no, it's a really powerful thing to pay attention to. And so you've reminded me, probably 10 years ago, I don't know, I'd have to have a look, but I wrote a blog. Maybe it was just a social media post, but it was about writing a social media shopping list. Because, when you go to the shops, if you go without your shopping list, you just end up buying all kinds of random things. You get distracted, and there's just more chocolate in the trolley than you intended, and not as many vegetables as you had on the list. And so I realized that I would go on Facebook, and I probably only had Facebook and Twitter at the time, but I'd go on there intentionally, like, I must send Donna a message because I loved what she did last week and I just want to go and encourage her. So I hop onto Facebook, and then I see something and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and I comment, and then I get off Facebook and I'm like, I don't know, what did I go there for? And I'm like, oh, Donna, that's right. So I started writing a little list. Before I open Facebook, I'm going to write down, who am I there for today? And, the purpose is so clear to me, but sometimes the actual things that you want to do, you can completely lose it because it is distracting.
Yeah. I call it the Phil Dunphy method. I don't know if you've seen the show Modern Family.
Oh, okay.
There's like a bumbling father figure called Phil Dunphy, and in one of the episodes, he goes to the garage looking for something, and he climbs up on the cupboards and gets up on the shelf, and he spots something. I think it was a pair of sunglasses, and he goes, "Oh, I've been missing those for years." And then that leads him to something else, and then something else and something else. Then he gets back off the shelf and he goes, "Oh, what was I looking for?"
Yeah.
He'd gone in looking for a tennis racket or something, and he'd ended off, an hour and a half later. And I joke with my husband when I do that, because, there'll be times where it doesn't matter how controlled you are, how focused you are, or whatever. I call it a Phil Dunphy moment. I just go, totally off on a tangent.
Yeah. And we probably used to roll our eyes when we'd see mum or grandma go to the cupboard and go, what was I looking for? It's like, no, we can all do that.
Absolutely. And that's a common thing that we see in business today that really impacts on our productivity. Anybody who's ever worked in, an open plan office environment will be familiar with the concept where you're madly working away at something and somebody comes into your peripheral vision and says, "Can I just ask a question?" It'll only take a moment.
Yeah.
Or somebody who rings up and goes, "Have you got 5 minutes?" And you start talking, but they've interrupted your deep work.
Yeah.
And so it can take you, I think it was the University of London research that found it can take you between 5 and 45 minutes to get your train of thought back. And that's why we say to ourselves, when we're bringing ourselves back to where we were before the interruptions, the common thing to say to ourselves is, now where was I?
Yes.
That's the trigger to your brain that, okay, well, let's come back now and let's remember where we were. But the challenge is you can't remember where you were. And it's a bit like that 3 o'clock in the morning thing. I don't know, it's probably never happened to you, Kerry, but, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you think, oh, I've just got to remember that. And you go, no, I'll remember it. And then you wake up in your morning and you go, what was that thing I had to remember? And then you just, the next time it happens, you beat yourself up and you've got to get up and you've got to write it down.
Yeah, I do have pen and paper beside the bed because I have some great thoughts as I'm just about to go to sleep. Or you wake up with a great idea and you're like, that's awesome. If I just lie here and keep thinking about it, it'll still be fresh in the morning. But no, it's worth writing it down.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Donna. We're just about out of time again already. Is there anything that I've missed, anything that you would love me to ask you about?
No, we've had fun, and I'm sure your listeners and you and I would probably be convinced we could talk for days.
We could talk for days. So what do you feel are the most useful tips that you've shared today that we can just reiterate?
Just be selective, work out why, for what, what purpose. Another one of my mentors said the same thing. For what purpose are you doing something? Yeah. If it's because that's what everyone else is doing, is that really the best reason for doing something?
Yeah. No, it's not. Yes.
That was a rhtorical question. You didn't need to answer that one out loud.
No, I just thought my answer could be taken the wrong way. So I'm so in the moment, Donna. I really love that you've shared that, because I think if you just be you, like be purposeful, as you've said, and to be purposeful, I think the more honest we get with ourselves about how do we best show up in the world, what are the strengths that we bring. If I tried to just be more tech savvy and compare myself to you, then I'd start feeling, inadequate, and then I wouldn't just bring my best self to the world. So it's so important that we do our own deep work into how do I best serve the world right now.
We bring our best selves, and that's the one thing that we should bring to every interaction with everybody, our best selves. And if you're doing that, that's the best that you can be. Don't try to be anybody else. Just be the best you can be, and be a better you than you were 5 minutes ago or an hour ago or yesterday. That's the goal. Just be better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah, go and amaze your 15-year-old self. Thank you once again, Donna. That was just awesome.
Nice to have a chat.
Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.